Hello and welcome to Sri Lanka 99.9 for Cricket Every Day. My name's Mark Machado and I'm joined by Estelle Vasudevan from the Papare. And today we are talking about Sri Lanka's squad for the T20 World Cup in Australia. Sri Lanka 99.94 is your new home for Sri Lanka content, and we'll be dropping into your podcast feed or on YouTube or the 99.94 app 3 times every week. Thank you for joining Cricket's Conversation. Estelle, the Sri Lanka squad dropped on Thursday afternoon, I think it was. Our initial plan was to record kind of instant reaction, but we delayed that a bit, mainly because we wanted the kind of dust to settle and see, kind of what other people's reactions were to the squad. But I don't think there was too many huge surprises, was there?
Yeah, you look at the 15 they've picked, majority of them went in for the Asia Cup as well. I think it's just the addition of Dushmantha Chamira that's been made. So overall, not too many surprises, which in itself is a surprise for Sri Lanka cricket, because we are usually used to having those one or two who just scrape their way into the squad. Not this time though. So looks like a pretty decent squad.
Yeah, I think there's some question marks about the batting order. Or kind of the unit seems pretty settled. It's during the Asia Cup though, that kind of number 3-4 position wasn't really firing. Asalanka, who I'm just gonna put my hand up and say I think he's one of my favourite batsmen, and I think he's one of those batsmen that if nurtured right and if he gets the right breaks at the right moments, could potentially go in and be, an all-time great Sri Lankan batter. He ended up getting dropped. Danushka didn't really fire at any moment during the tournament. DDS came in. He actually made some runs in the final, really important runs, and also he's got that. He's a much better bowler than when definitely Charith Asalanka is. So he gives that kind of third spinning option as well. Do you think though there's place for another, or maybe they should have looked at another batting option?
Yeah, when you look at the squad, it definitely seems like they are better short maybe. But the problem with Sri Lanka is the fact that you look beyond the 15 here and there aren't that many options. Of course, Bandara not in the official 15, but he will be traveling with the squad as well. So he is an extra batting option. But beyond that, it's very hard to, at the top of your mind, it's very hard to pick out any of the local domestic batters who can maybe fit into that number 3-4 position, or particularly with the way Sri Lanka has been playing. In the Asia Cup, we saw much more attacking mindset from the batsman. So that's one thing I think which may have led the selectors to just go for the extra bowling options, because as you mentioned, the batting does look kind of settled apart from that 3 and 4 spot where they'll be hoping 2 of those 3 batters who you named will come good.
Yeah. The other thing I think that's worth mentioning, and actually I mentioned this last time round, was that in T20 cricket, you're not looking for every batter to hit 20 runs, right? It's about you're in your top 6 or 7 batters, you're hoping that 2 or 3 of them go and make a decent score, right? So actually going 5 games and there being, I think it was only in the final where Dhananjaya managed to hit any runs from those positions, then maybe that's a kind of all right return if you've got other players around them that are doing okay, right? Because you have to look at it's not like a test match, it's even not like an ODI. You have to look at the context of when these guys are coming in and how many balls are left and what their expected strike rate should be for where the team is at that moment, right? So I'm not sure if it's actually as big a problem as we think it is. The other 2 people I think are that, we've got to consider is that 2 of our best batters, Kushal Janath Pereira, he's been a hero for Sri Lanka on many occasions. Let's not forget his heroics in South Africa, or I know different format, but he's a big hitting top order batsman. and Avishka Fernando are currently both injured, right? And they're going to be two players that are going to be in contention for those spots as well at some point, I'd imagine.
Yeah, particularly I think Kusal Janit may have been a really good pick for that number 4 position. But just on Charit Asalanka, I know he's not been in good touch. He hasn't put on that many runs, but he's the type of batter who can win you games, right? He's the type of guy who can play that impact innings that can switch things on for your team. And we saw that in the last World Cup as well. He wasn't making 50s and 80s, 90s, but maybe that 20 of 9 deliveries or 30 of 15 deliveries is going to completely switch the momentum of the game. And he was doing it in the power play because Sri Lanka kept losing those early wickets. So I think that's where he is so important. But of course, I understand why someone would want to pick Dhananjay De Silva because he offers you so much value with the ball, right? It's really something that's really hard to ignore because he's not a part-time bowler. I don't think you can call him a part-time bowler anymore. He's that type of maybe in the same mode of TM Dilshan where he can really give you 2 to 3 overs where you're not hiding him, but you're really using him as a wicket taking option or option to keep the runs down, particularly against the left-handers. So I understand why that change has been made, but at the same time, someone like Asalanka, like I said, he can change a game. He's going to give you maybe, like you said, maybe not every in every game you play, but when he's going to give you a good knock, it's probably going to be a match winning one. So that's, I think, something that Sri Lanka need to kind of weigh the options, what they want from the guys coming in at number 3 and number 4. Gunatilaka also, remember, batting out of position is usually an opening batter, but this time, given the responsibility at batting at number 4, he did look in good touch in a couple of those games, but unfortunately wasn't able to really get going throughout. But again, do you want or do you need them firing in every game, or are you looking for those impact knocks every couple of games?
It's interesting, right? Because part of this conundrum, because as you say, Gunatilaka is an opening batter. He's quite explosive at the top of the innings as well. Possibly more explosive than the current two openers of Mendes and Pathum Nissanka. But there's all this data to suggest that if you're going to play Kusal Mendes in T20s, he's got to open the batting, right? So the kind of, I suppose, the victim of this data freak is Danushka, right? And he's been pushed down, and it's almost like you got to get 4 of these from this set of 5. The openers came out at the Asia Cup looking incredible, with great stats. Me and you have spoken at length about what we think Pathum Nissanka could go and achieve, and Kusal Mendes is in form, and the selectors have a nice headache here, I suppose. But it's interesting what you say about DDS as a bowler as well, and I wonder if actually on bouncy Aussie pitches that aren't going to have a huge amount of turn, if you're gonna play, I assume they'll stick with Hasaranka and Tikshana, then does his bowling ability, does that kind of prohibit him in a way of getting into the team? I mean, we're talking about a squad today, we're not talking about the 11, and there's plenty of time before Sri Lanka's first game. It's just under over a month away. So and there's warm-up games and so on, and we'll get more of an indication from what we hear about the team in terms of what their thoughts are. But I think the good thing to take away from all of this, though, is there seems to be a bit of flexibility in the side, and also if they can. What we saw in the UAE was, depending on the team, depending on the conditions, depending on the pitches, they've also got options in terms of what they can do as well, which is great.
Yeah, I think that's like we mentioned before as well, a really good problem to have for Sri Lanka, because usually we're trying to fill up 6 spots in that starting 11. But this time, we've just got a couple of problem areas, which, I mean, come the World Cup, I'm sure there'll be plans in place. And flexibility in those positions is going to be really important. Like you said, Dhananjay De Silva's bowling ability is obviously a massive advantage to Sri Lanka. And also, I think what we saw in that final of the Asia Cup was also he's a man for a crisis, right? He's got the technique to handle fast bowling or spin bowling or whatever condition. So that is once again something that works in his favor. Where he's not going. He's a guy who you can trust to send in when Sri Lanka are in trouble and they need someone to kind of steady the innings.
Yeah, and he's just a calm head, isn't he? And actually, I know that the stereotype of Sri Lankans as being quite laid back and very, very hospitable. Actually, this Sri Lanka squad is full of players who are feisty and trying to get into your face and trying to irritate the opposition, which I am here for.
Yeah.
I love all that.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. But maybe you need a few calm heads and cool heads at points as well to steer you through those difficult games. But as I say, I think it's great that all these lads are in the mix, isn't it? If you're listening to Cricket's Conversation 99.94, whatever your team, we have the show for you on podcast, YouTube, or on the 99.94 app. We have India, England, South Africa, West Indies. And if you want to find the best way to follow us on social media at 99.94 DM by downloading the 99.94 app or Google 99.94 on podcast, we speak cricket. And if you are listening to this, we've got a massive favour to ask, and that's that you definitely give us a review on Apple Podcast or Google Podcast, whatever platform you're listening to. Please give us a full 5 stars. I'm just saying give us 5 stars even if you don't think it. I'm just asking you a favour here, guys. And leave us a review. That helps us kind of get more traction on the platforms and grows our numbers, which will mean that we can do more things and get more support and grow the show. Estelle, can we talk about bowling now? Because this is where there is some actual serious competition for places in the squad at the moment, right?
Yep, I think with Chamira coming in, then you're going to have to make the hard decision. Do you leave Pramod Madhushan or Dilshan Madhusanka out? Because I don't see Sri Lanka dropping Theekshana or Hasaranga. And of course, Chamika Karunaratne is going to be your all-rounder at number 8. So Chamira comes in. Do you go with the left arm quick Dilshan Madhushanka, or do you go with Pramod Madhushan? Madhushan, of course, was the most successful in terms of wickets in the 2 games he played in the Asia Cup. But it's really tough to go beyond Madhushanka with the left arm angle, and he bowls quick, can be a bit aggressive. He offers some variety to that bowling attack.
If they are playing with, if Dhananjaya De Silva, sorry, I know we're going back to him, and Dustin Shanaka are there, and you've got your 2 other spinners, do you think there's any they might consider dropping Charmika to get another seamer in?
Personally,
or another faster seamer in?
Yeah,
obviously he's a seam bowler as well.
I don't really see it because Chamika is bowling in the high 130s. He offers you a good option with the bat as well. In fact, I know he bats at number 8, but I think he's capable to bat higher as well because he's used really good options. I think what we've seen, particularly during the Asia Cup, is that he's got a good head on his shoulders when he's batting. I won't talk about his running between the wickets because obviously there's something there. But so I really don't see Sri Lanka leaving him out. It feels like there are those maybe 8 positions kind of nailed down. So yeah, gonna be tough to pick, but personally, I don't see them going, away from Karunaratne.
We need to talk about Lauru Kamara, right? Because he's in the squad if he passes all the relevant fitness tests. He's had a very strange kind of 12 months since the last World Cup, though, right? He's been injured a lot. The last World Cup had some highs and had some lows for him. Where do you think? Firstly, can you tell us about his last 12 months, and then where do you think that leaves him and his role within the side at the moment?
Yeah, on Kumara, I think he is the type of bowler that any side wants to have, right? He's quick, he's aggressive, to me, one of the greatest talents in Sri Lanka cricket at the moment, because you can't teach that kind of pace and aggression. It has to come naturally. You can coach the line and length into him. You can coach the death bowling into him, but you're not going to find bowlers who can bowl that quick in Sri Lanka very often. So I feel like Sri Lanka have not managed him well enough during his career. Of course, he's um, struggled with injury. In the last 12 months, I think the World Cup obviously started off brilliantly for him. He had some amazing bowling performances and really was kind of an X factor in that bowling lineup, which is already pretty good, right? But that performance against South Africa, where he went for 16, 17 runs off the last over against David Miller, which may have cost Sri Lanka a place in the semifinals in the end. From that point, it's kind of been, a downward spiral. He had a similar performance against, I can't remember the team exactly now, but in the LPL as well. And it left him in tears, right? So obviously, mentally, it's affected him, that inability to close out a game where he's defending 16 to 17 of the last over. But in his defense, right, what I'm thinking is, look, this guy hasn't had that amount of experience bowling in the death. Remember, in Sri Lanka cricket, these guys, and the women's team as well, of course, they're kind of learning on the job. So the World Cup is not a place where you want to be learning, right? You want to go in there with your already established roles and your skills. But that wasn't the case for Kumara in the last World Cup. He given that dead bowling role, of course, he did it against some of the lower ranked teams in the first round, and he was really successful. But Sri Lanka weren't really under that much pressure in those games. But in the game against South Africa, up against, David Miller is a very good bat at the death, right? He's a finisher. He's done it for South Africa. He's done it in the IPL. He's done it in leagues around the world. So he's not a guy who it's possibly easy to bowl at defending 16 of the last over. So Kumara failed on that occasion, and it seemed like a lot of faith that was lost, or a lot of faith people had in him was lost after that one performance. And since then, he's kind of had a struggle with fitness. Of course, I think he was injured like in the first over of a test against India in Mohali, and hamstring injury, of course, ruled him out. And then, the thing is, when it comes to players like that who you aren't sure of in terms of fitness, it's very difficult to get picked in a side also, because the captain maybe doesn't have enough faith whether you'll be able to last the match. And you can just imagine in a World Cup game, you lose one of your main bowlers without him bowling his full quota, and then you have the problem of finding that extra option. So that's been, I think, one of the issues, apart from his bowling, that's really been a problem for him. It'll be interesting to see whether he does make the playing 11 if he is fit. He hasn't played any competitive cricket since June, I think. Hasn't played international cricket since March. So it's going to be a big call, I think, if they do include him in the playing 11 if he is fit.
Personally, I would love to see him in that 11. I think he's a feisty guy. Like, he's, we'll all remember what happened against Bangladesh. And obviously, that's kind of almost the start of our current feud with Bangladesh that is kind of ongoing. And one of the most exciting things about Sri Lankan cricket at the moment is this feud with Bangladesh. We remember those scenes, and I think he's one of those players. I think he's a confidence player, right? I think if the coaching team get behind him and give him the confidence, I think, you look at the atmosphere around the squad at the moment seems to be incredible. Everyone fighting for each other. A lot, some of the boys even talk about having a point to prove and, trying to kind of step up into the role. And I think maybe this could possibly be a great opportunity for him to I don't want to say have a comeback, but to remind everyone what exactly he can do. And I think you're right about making that point about Sri Lanka learning on the job, right? If we were to have done this pod this time last year with that squad going into last year's World Cup, it would have felt like there was a lot of unknown quantities and players that we weren't sure whether they had the ability to do it at the top level. The last year, almost all the players have proved that actually they totally deserve to be at the top table, and maybe it's Lauru's time to prove that. And I hope it's his time to prove that now. And I wish him all the luck in trying to get it done. Chamira's in the squad as well. I don't think there's any doubt that if he's fit, he plays. Do you have any insight into whether or not he is going to be fit enough to play? I mean, as I said, we're recording this on the 17th of September, which means there's almost exactly a month to the first game on the 16th of October, right?
Yeah, I think he'll play. Because it doesn't seem like the injury will, or it has been managed well. I think even maybe the Asia Cup may have been kind of precautionary in some ways, try to keep him as fit as possible because there's a World Cup coming forward. I'm not saying that's why he didn't travel with the team. Obviously he was injured, but you want to keep someone like Chamira safe because he's had his issues with injuries in the past as well, where he's had long months, even years out of the game. So they probably just want to keep him safe. We may see him in the warm-ups, but as you said, like if he's fit, there's no way they're leaving him out.
Yeah. Let's talk about players who were unlucky not to have made it into the final squad. I know I'm going to bring up some players who were in the reserve list, and then after that, should we look at some of the tweets that we got in for our call out and what other people think? So Estelle, I'll ask you, which players do you think were unlucky not to have made the squad?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's. I think the 15 they've picked here are the 15 best players in the country at the moment for their roles. Definitely, I don't think there's anyone you can look beyond this. Maybe, like you said, Ashin Bandara might offer something with the bat if we are kind of a batter short. But other than that, I don't see any other batsman or bowler really, knocking the doors down for this tournament.
So I my feeling is this. I think Ashin Bandara, I think probably isn't in our top 15, but I think he could probably, if he felt upset that he wasn't there, I would, I'd acknowledge those feelings and think it's coming from the right places. I think he was so instrumental in particular the final. He saved about 20 runs by himself, right? In his fielding, but I mean, it would be ridiculous if we were saying that somebody was in a World Cup squad for their fielding ability alone, right? I think Benura Fernando is been really unlucky with injuries. Also, the other thing I will say, there's so many English people I meet who follow Sri Lanka very casually. Benura Fernando seems to have really stuck out for them. I don't know if it's because of his imposing frame or his hair, whatever. They all seem to love him. He gets mentioned a lot. The other player, I obviously we'll never know this because we're not privy to selection meetings, that I think, I don't want to say is unlucky, but I wonder how close he was to being selected as well, Alagay, because for me, he's the only kind of player we've got that kind of fits into that Hasaranga role or could come in as one of the an all-rounder. Obviously, the pitches aren't going to be aren't going to be great for his bowling in Australia, but he could have stepped into that role if anything happened to Hasaranga, and he's so young, he's 19. This is potentially a great tournament for him to have learned what it's like to be in one of these major tournaments as well, and learn of some of the slightly older players. And I'm also surprised that we haven't gone for any of our not taking any of our slingers with us as well. I mean, was it during the India series at one? We had two of them in the squad, Thushara and Patharana, and they've both been dropped now. And I just think that I don't actually in the lot, from what happened at the Asia Cup, I don't think either of them necessarily justify being in the 15. But I wonder if there's a conversation of we should take one of these bowlers because just actually almost every team kind of fears them, right, in some way because they haven't seen much of their actions and their actions are so unorthodox. And I wonder if there was a thought about maybe, Patharana in particular, he's only 19. He's got wickets in the IPL. Admittedly, he's not done a huge amount when he had his one chance at the Asia Cup. But, at that age, he can definitely grow into something. He's got plenty of time to grow into a bit of a player. So I think, any of those players that I've mentioned, I think are unlucky for not making it. But I think, broadly speaking, I think they've got the 15 right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think on Matisha Pathirana, what was interesting is just on his non-selection is that he was in the Asia Cup squad, right? So uh, played the first game, bowled 1 over, and then he's left out. And then when Asita Fernando did not perform well, Sri Lanka didn't go back to him. They went for Pramod Padushan, who's obviously a different type of bowler. So it's interesting to me that now all of a sudden he's not even in the standby or the reserve list. So obviously there was some thinking behind taking him for the Asia Cup, right? But something, maybe the way he's been bowling in the nets or whatever, didn't really impress the selectors enough to kind of have him in the top 20 names. But of course, like you said, he's only 19 years old. He's got a long way to go. Think we might see a lot more of him in the next couple of years once the World Cups are kind of done with, and then you have time to grow a team once again.
If you love the language of cricket and want more, then head over to the 99.94 app and you can hear all our podcasts and cricket commentary. We're adding new shows all the time and covering cricket series from all over the world. Be the first to hear all our announcements by following us on social media at 9994DM. Welcome to Cricket's Conversation. And as I said, if you do listen to Sri Lanka 99.94, please do leave us a review, tell all your friends about it, and follow us on social media. Estelle, for the final part of the show, should we read out some of the tweets we got about the squad selection, and then you can just give us or we'll just give you our live reaction to it. Obviously, I have, I imagine Estelle has as well. We've read these as they've come in. If you don't know, we're both on Twitter at Mark Machado, and Estelle's on Twitter as well. If you want to follow her, it's at Estelle_Vasude1, as in _VASUDE1, the number one. And we're always talking about cricket. I'm also talking about football and possibly some UK politics as well. Ignore that, but talk to me about, at any given moment, at any given day, just message me about Sri Lankan cricket, and from awake, I'll reply, right? So let's look at some of these tweets. Chris in New Zealand messaged us to say Kamara's too much reliability. Banura gives better variety and impressed the conditions over there before he got injured. Is this a bit unfair on Kamara? I know we spoke about this earlier. Still?
Yeah, ideally I would have liked to have both of them in the squad. But like I said, what Kumara offers is that raw pace, right? And Binura, on the other hand, brings his own skill set, but we already have a left armer in the squad. So I think that's the thinking behind it. But also, I'm not sure Binura Fernando is really 100% fit. He did have a hamstring injury the last time I spoke to one of my colleagues about him. That's the news I kind of got. So I'm not sure he's 100% fit, and he's another one who's had like massive problems with the injury. So I'm not sure Sri Lanka cricket wanted to kind of take him along at the expense of someone like Dilshan Madhusanka or Pramod Madhushan.
Pavan got in touch to say the biggest concern would be Chamira and Kamara recovering fully, as they have named only one fast bowler in the reserves. Instead of Praveen Jai Wickrama, another pacer could have been included, but he may be there for the batters to get used to left-hand spin as he'll be travelling. I think that's quite a fair point, right?
Yeah.
About why they've taken Praveen.
Yeah, I think opting for Vandase ahead of him was a good choice, because there's almost no chance that either one of them would play ahead of Hasaranga or Tikshana. So it's always going to be kind of a replacement option. So it's good to have, like Pawan mentioned, someone in the nets giving you some practice against those different bowling options as well.
Just a couple more. This is from Cricket on Screen. I don't know what your name is, Cricket on Screen. I think if Avishka was fit, I would have included him instead of Gunnar. Banura would have been in. If Dilshan and Pramod would have performed the way they had. Here I would like to mention the guy who's now in the Major League Cricket. Oh, sorry, I think that's minor league cricket. But if he would have played in SL cricket, I would have included Shahan Jayasuriya, would have provided a backup to someone like Barnaker and could bowl as well. But that was just my out of the box dream. I think this is quite an interesting suggestion. I think we should kind of point out that when he left SL to go to America, the dream for him was then to play for America, right? And he said that he wasn't going to be available for selection for Sri Lanka anymore. I'm not sure whether SLC would have looked at a player playing in minor league cricket. But, you know, that's the situation, right?
Yeah, and from what I heard, we might see Shahan Jayasuriya in a US jersey sometime this year or next year. So definitely doors closed on Sri Lanka cricket. But yeah, considering the type of player he is, he may have been a really good addition to the squad.
Guys, let's leave it there. Obviously, we'll read more of your reaction out as and when we get it. And if, as I said, if you want to interact with us, please do. We love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Sri Lanka 99.9 for cricket every day. Please rate, review, and subscribe. Download the 99.9 for app and follow us on @Mark Machado or @Estelle_Vasu Day 1, as in the number 1. We'll put links up for everything we do there on this podcast and beyond. Also, follow our network @9994DM on social media. Follow for podcast and commentary from the bat and ball world. Thanks for joining Cricket's Conversation on 99.94. We speak cricket.